Wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi. Alright guys, so welcome back. So in this video I'm going to be showing you how to work with wax materials in Corona, which is a very simple material, very simple approach. And yes, it does take a little bit more time to render because it's going to be a translucent material. But it shouldn't give you any big issues, so to say. So let's just start with my settings. So tone mapping, ACS output off for this tutorial if you're going to be repeating it, and I'm using a little bit bloom and glare. Now for these settings, I did disable fast preview the noise during render because I'm going to be using this in interactive mode, and as you know I work in centimeters, so metric in display unit scale centimeters and system centimeters, right? So, all right, so what is a wax material? Well, it is a translucent material. So it's going to be scattering light through itself. So I'm not gonna, explain about it a little, too much. So because it's gonna get really boring. So let's start creating our wax foundation material. So which we're gonna be using Corona Legacy material as always. And we're gonna call it wax or wax one, doesn't really matter for now, but this is gonna be your base. So I'm just gonna apply to my object, which is this guy here. I'm gonna apply there, and I'm gonna use my interactive rendering. There we go. And we're gonna start creating wax material. So for the color, doesn't really matter, and I will explain when it does matter. So for now we're gonna leave it at default, right? It doesn't really matter. The next thing we're gonna do is put one here. We want it to be reflective, and we want to be matte reflective, so we're gonna put 05, right? The next thing we're gonna be doing is putting refraction, because for the material to be translucent you need refraction a little bit or full way. We're gonna go full way because it's just gonna be easier for you guys to understand. The next thing we're gonna be doing is we're gonna put wax IOR, which is 44 in the back and 44 for the refraction. Keep these both numbers the same. All right, so now the more complicated bit, which is not really complicated bit, but I'm just gonna be showing you. I'm just gonna move this a little bit to the right so you could see my preview. So we're gonna be touching volumetric and SSS. So I was showing this with the glass material, but this is gonna be a little bit different, right? So we're creating wax. So very important, I'm just gonna press stop because I think a lot of people will not know this, especially the beginners. Just gonna close this guy. So as you can see, this square here is 1 meters by 1 meters, right? So it's a 1 meter width. Now, this is going to be very important because I did scale and X format my object, which is going to be roughly 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters, and the height is, well, as you can see here, it's 25.2. So I was trying to match the scale of a decently sized real world candle, right? So my candle is not gonna be 1 meters by 1 meters. That's a massive block of wax, right? So we're not be doing that. So imagine you would have a candle on your table in a real world unit scale. So let's just say the candle is going to be, 15 centimeters high or something like that, right? So that effect that we're going to be creating, it will depend on your scale. Okay, that is really important. So if my object is this and I'm using a certain amount of settings in the distance, that might not work for your object because your object is going to be maybe 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, right? So you might go with very, very low numbers like 0.2, 0.3, depends also, where you're working. Maybe you're working in inches, etc. But for this one, we're going to be using centimeters. So I'm going to apply this on my object, use the interactive rendering, and as you can see, I'm getting refractions now, and the reflection glossiness is 05. And now what we're going to be trying to do is putting this number to, let's just say 1, right? Because my object is, let's just say 30 centimeters. The next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be scattering inside, well, not scattering, absorption color. So it was like the similar effect like we done for the glass tutorial, right? So the deeper we will go, you know, the more this color is going to be noticeable. So for example, I'm going to put like a candleish color, maybe something like that. And as you can see, that effect starts to showing in the deep parts of the object, right? So to say. So I'm going to put that color there. So something along these lines now. And I'm just going to copy with just dragging and dropping that color there as a copy. Bam, there we go, right? So we just got our first wax foundation. So from here on, you're gonna be, you know, adjusting your material, so to say. So I'm just gonna go a little bit brighter. So I wanna, you know, bump up that scattering, so to say. Bump up that scattering, boy. All right, so let's just say we would want to, I'm just gonna press double click on this guy and press letter U. It's gonna refresh my preview. Let's just say I want to improve my quality. Well, the look, that it would look a little bit more like a wax material. So I did import a couple of maps into my scene just to speed things up. So a very quick brief overview. So I have here, what do I have here? I have a dirt map, which is black and white. As you can see here, is going something like this. The scale is here. So as you know, my object is unwrapped. So everything should work, you know, accordingly. So I am running through color correction. So the color correction, you will find it there. And I'm using this settings for the color correction. So advanced and gamma 3. That's pretty much it, right? So I'm gonna plug this into reflection glossiness. Bam, there you go. And you're gonna start seeing, you know, the darker areas are gonna make my object reflections look more matte, and the lighter areas are gonna, you know, start to make my object look a little bit more reflective, so to say. But I'm gonna try to mix this color with the intensity, right? So basically this color, this intensity here, if you put 0, that's going to be black. If you're going to put 1, it's going to be completely white. And I have a map here. So the reflection does take you know, color information, so to say. But I'm going to be using black and white for here. I'm not going to be using any colors there. All right, so let's continue. Now I need a little bit of a bump map. So I have another map that it's basically like an ocean displacement map, but I did stretch it out. I'm using summed area at 1. Doesn't really matter, I can use pyramidal because I am kind of using the blur value of 1, which is the default value. And I'm going to be putting this to the bump map. So I'm going to be getting a little bit of that bump there. So I'm going to be using bump to 1, which is kind of works. I can put 0.5 if I want to, doesn't really matter. But then I'm going to really change my object by putting the displacement to 0.5 here, right? And I'm going to be putting this same map into my displacement, and look what's going to happen now. Bam, my object completely changed its look, right? So it looks more like it's made from wax, right? As you can see here, right? By the way, I do have a seam there. I didn't, you know, manage to, I didn't have the time to map it. By the way, this map is seamless, but the thing is I didn't join correctly the seam there, so you will see the seam there, but it's perfectly fine. You will always have some kind of a seam somewhere hidden, right? It's just how it is, especially when you unwrap pillows, etc. You know, you're always gonna have some seams at some point. Okay, so this is our base wax material, as you can see here. And I think it does work really well. Now, if you want to, I'm just gonna, you know, copy this guy down. If you will want to make it more, I don't know, more not translucent, but more refractive, so to say. So what you need to do is go here. I'm gonna apply onto my object. And you need to increase this distance number. So as you know, it's just basically the translucency is just gonna get lighter, lighter, and lighter, as you can see here, right? So if I'm gonna go with the color a little bit more, you know, aggressive, that is what you're gonna, you know, start getting. And keep in mind that this is looks not like wax, but it does look waxy still because of my reflection glossiness, but it looks like more like a gelatin. It's not like yeah, it doesn't look really like a wax. So keep in mind, you have to play around with smaller numbers here. So for example, 1, 2, I think for my object, for this size object, 2 works fine as well. But it does, some areas don't look, you know, as waxy. It kind of looks a little bit more like like I said, it's like more like a, you know, becoming more glass looking like, right? So keep in mind, play around with this number and these colors there. So for the absorption color, what you want to see inside, that's what you're going to see, you know, the deeper you will go, so to say, you will see that result inside. So for example, look what's going to happen here. So I'm going to put this to a very aggressive color, which is, you know, like a aqua blue. And as you can see, you know, you're kind of seeing this color in the deeper parts of the object, even there and even there, you can see a little bit of that bluish tint, right? So for example, let me put this to, I don't know, let me put this to this bluish color. And let me drag this down and make it more blue, which is like this, and make it darker. Make it more darker like this. Let's just put this to 1. You can see that this material does take a little bit more time of processing and rendering, right? The noise is cleaning slower, etc., etc., etc. Now, very important, very quick tip. If you are in a rush and you need to for this material to render faster, just use this guy. Bam, single bounce, boom. So this will render a lot faster because you know, your rays, your scattering rays are gonna be bouncing only. It's gonna be bounce one time. It's gonna be bouncing only one time. So this will decrease your rendering time, but it's not necessarily. It's gonna look, you know, realistic in some areas. So if you're disabling this, obviously it's gonna take longer to render, but it will give you, you know, better results, so to say. So just keep that in mind as well, right? So for example, if you want to make it more, I don't know, purpley, let me just do this. And as you can see how it reacts, right? You can really get, you know, play around with both of these colors. You can get very nice looking effects. I wouldn't go very saturated with colors, especially with candles, but obviously, you know, choose your colors. But this is roughly how you create a wax material, as you can see here. Now, if you want to create a more, let me just make a copy of this base material. I'm just gonna drop it down. So let me just create a more whitish, right? So for the absorption color, so what is gonna go inside, right, through the deepness of it, I'm just gonna go with the, literally I'm just gonna desaturate the color and make it maybe a tiny bit warm, something like this. And I'm gonna apply this object, sorry, this material onto my object. There we go. So as you can see, it doesn't really, you know, give me any that deep color tint, right? It just gives me this whitish kind of a deep color, right? So the next thing I'm going to be doing is kind of the same. Well, actually what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to dragging this color and make it as a copy. That's the fastest and the easiest way of doing it. There we go. So we are getting our material a little bit more to the whitish side, right? So let me just try to increase this to 200. I wouldn't, you know, recommend going above 200 because obviously it depends from your scene lighting. If your scene lighting is very overexposed, so to say, you know, you might get issues in your highlights, or you know, it's just, it can get too overexposed, so keep that in mind. So let's just say, you know, keep this, you know, keep this, let's just put this to 220. I think I don't think you should go higher than that. Okay, it's just don't make it too white, so to say. And let's just try to increase the distance to 2. And as you can see, it's becoming more refractive, so to say. You're starting to get more of that refraction mixing with the scattering color. It just it starts to look like I said, like a gelatin, something like that, right? If you want to create some kind of a gelatin, just increase this number to, I don't know, 6 or something like that. So But like I said, it will depend from your object, right? And you know, this is not the way you should be creating a you know, a wax material. So use small numbers here, please. Okay. All right, so enough talking. Let me just put this to 0.6. Let's see how that's gonna look. It's gonna look very, very, you know, waxy, and in the way on the edges, on the corners there, you're gonna see that nice translucent, right? There you go. That's just perfect. If you want to make it more white, yeah, literally just kill this color completely, right? Just kill this color if you want to, and literally you're not gonna have any, you know, saturation, so to say. There we go. So there you go, and that's like a white wax material. All right, now I'm gonna show you guys how this will react on a, let's just say, a real candle geometry, right? So I'm just gonna press stop here, and let me show you an object that I created. It's a very quick object, but I think it will do the trick. So let me hide that and unhide this. So as you can see, we have a candle which is roughly 20 centimeters high, right? So I did scale it up. I did use the X form, so this should work correctly. So as you can see, this is the scale, so 20 centimeters in height. So it's a decently sized, you know, big candle, like a church candle, something like that. So 17, 17, X and Y, it doesn't really matter, but you know, the shape is this. I'm using a plane with a texture, as you can see this. And I'm using a sphere light, which is basically, now for the reflections, I wouldn't suggest using the reflections. Usually what I would do is this. Okay, if you're creating an interior space, you want to remove all of it. Okay, now because that is really important. You only need the light, right? And this is the guy that is going to be reflective. Now if you're going to be using Phoenix FD, creating fire, etc., right? So you know, you do you, experiment in any way you want. It's just going to be a little bit more complicated. I will be showing you that in the future, but for now, let's keep it simple, right? So this is my object. Let me just render this in interactive mode. And as you can see, this is, you know, I sculpted this literally in Max using push-pull tool. And it was just a quick model, right? And that flame there works quite nicely. By the way, that flame, sorry, not that one, that flame material is very simple. It is a, not that one, sorry. I'm just trying to select that guy there, and there we go. So as you can see, I'm using a flame material. I then literally desaturated and using this as an alpha, and I'm plugging this into Corona light material. There we go. These are the settings. I'm using 1.5 emit light, right? So it will emit a little bit of the light, but honestly, you don't really need to use this, right? You don't really need, this is not your light source. Keep that in mind, right? This is not important. So don't use this as a light source, use a different light source. And in that light source, so exclude that plane, please. So for example, you don't want to, you know, overexpose this plane already with your main light source. So I just candle plane. So I just removed that exclude, right? Keep that in mind if you're going to be trying to recreate that. And I have the 3D thick there, so which is the black thing there, and it kind of blends in very nicely. So let me just select my candle, and we're gonna keep this very simple. So first material that we're gonna be using is this guy. So we're gonna be just disabling these guys completely because this is already kind of modeled, so shape, so to say. So I'm gonna apply this guy here. Bam, there we go. So this is a very like an oldish candle material, as you can see here. Now let me put this purple one. Let's see how that works. There we go. That works something in that way. Obviously we can, you know, play around a little bit more, and we're going to do that just now. So let me just remove all of that. So literally I have nothing. There we go. That's like a more like a whitish candle. And as you can see, the light is scattering really nicely, as you can see there and there and there. But you know, it starts dying, you know, in the middle somewhere. And you know, if you want to make it a little bit more, so to say, a natural color, you know, you can put absorption in a little bit back, so you know, the deeper it will scatter that color. And for example, that guy there, and maybe a little bit more to the reddish side. Just really play around with the colors, you know. It's a very personal preference. Or for example, you have a reference image that you have to replicate. Maybe the wax is going to be pinkish, right? It's really, you know, but if we're talking about these natural materials, this is what you're going to be, you know, playing with. So for example, I'm going to put 05, you know. So I think that's pretty much it for the wax materials. In regards of the coloring, if you're playing with the colors, play with these colors, darker, lighter, and by the way, you can use colors, right? Just keep that in mind. So I'm talking about intensity, so black and white, and I'm talking about the intensity here. So the more the lighter will be, the more scattering you're gonna get. So for example, if I'm gonna remove this guy here, you know, it's gonna become darker and darker because you're scattering the light less and less. So just keep that in mind, right? And don't touch the directionality. You don't really need to play around with it unless you are, you know, trying to get some kind of a weird result, so to say. And for the single bounce, if you want to speed up the rendering time of the, you know, this translucency material, just use single bounce, and you know, it will do the trick. But like I say, it's not the realistic result that you should be working with. Now, as you saw, you know, when you're scattering a light color like a whitish color, this works, well, really bad, so to say. But if you're using a material like this, now I'm gonna be applying onto my object. As you can see, if I'm using single bounce, it's not really giving me, so to say, you know, a massive difference, so to say, because this material, this scattering color intensity, it's already very dark. Like I'm killing it manually already, right? I'm killing the translucency myself already. So, but if you have a bright material, so to say, this will, you know, give you a worse result, so to say. But if you're, you know, not using that, it's gonna give you, you know, the most realistic result for this option. So in general, I think I hope that this made clear. You know, if you want to achieve a little bit more better results, you know, use some dirt maps, etc. In the reflection glossiness, you know, you can use a little bit of a bump, some kind of a bump and displacement if you want to. But you know, this object was already, so to say, you know, carved up. So those are the settings, very simple, you know. By the way, in regards of the diffuse color, so just remember this one rule: if you are killing the refraction, this color will start to basically come in, right? So keep that in mind. But for the wax materials, I would always keep this at 1. But if you, for whatever reason, would want to, you know, remove this color, like kill it for a little bit, you know, this color is gonna start working. Keep that in mind. Now, if I'm gonna put this to 1, this diffuse color is not gonna do anything at all, right? So just keep that in mind. You can leave it at default. So just to summarize this, a wax material, very simple, legacy. Leave the diffuse by default, put at 1.6, IOR 44, IOR 44, put that to 1, go here, change the colors, for example, I don't know, something a little bit to the warmish side, copy that color there, bam, and put here 2.6, something like that, right? Bam, apply to the object, and just, you know, work around with these colors there. There you go, something like that, and just, you know, just play around with the settings a little bit more. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I don't know, leave questions in the comments section, and ask anything you want. If this made no sense, or this is too complicated, or maybe you know a better way of how to create a wax material with Corona, yeah, just please share. and maybe, you know, we could do a follow-up on this one, but this was a more complicated tutorial because, you know, you have more settings to play around with. But in general, this is how fast you can create it, like, you know, 10 seconds and you have the material, right? Or, you know, you can just add numbers very fast. Yeah, so again, thank you very much for watching, guys. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in my next video.